Is that the property you stole? Is that the bicycle you stole? Is that the bicycle you stole? Let the record show that this police officer stole that bike. Are you going to continue to refuse to identify yourself?
I don't believe I've been asked to identify.
Yes, you have. I was yelling it to you across the street. So what's your name and badge number?
Officer Lindsay.
We're gonna lock it up right there.
Right on this one?
Yeah.
Oh, right there.
Just letting you know, if you lock that bike up, you're committing a crime. That's called theft. Evie. Evie, come here and talk to the officer who actually drew his gun when he wasn't supposed to. You realize that I have every right to use the force continuum to stop you guys from committing a crime.
That entire event.
No, she doesn't. We're investigating a crime. So be quiet, Lemke.
I would like to talk to you about it.
You can be like a minute to help him out.
You're not helping him, you're committing a crime. We're investigating it. Your supervisor refused to allow someone to take a report. Here is Lemke about to commit a crime by locking up a bike that does not belong to her. Are you able to articulate any personal first-hand knowledge of factual evidence that that man is in your jurisdiction? Yes or no? Failure to have personal first-hand knowledge of such is a crime. It's called theft, kidnapping. There she is, placing the lock on the bike.
Do you need to stand that close?
I'm investigating you. You are committing a crime.
I'm not committing a
Yes,
crime.
you are. You're stealing somebody's bike, and you have no personal first-hand knowledge of any factual evidence that that man has any obligation to obey any of your orders. You're stealing his bike.
This is his bike lock, sir.
What?
This is his bicycle lock. He asked us to lock up his bike right
Yeah,
here.
because you're kidnapping
with
him.
his bicycle lock.
Because you're kidnapping him. And I didn't catch him asking that. Can you prove your claim? Because I will find out. So why are you kidnapping him in the first place? There she is committing a crime.
Right. I don't want to shoot anybody, but I have to like protect myself.
No, you.
I'm not going to let somebody act like they're drawing a gun and then let
He
them
didn't.
put the drop on me.
He didn't act like he was drawing a gun.
That's my perspective. I wish it hadn't come to that.
Yeah, because you're not
Everything
trained.
worked out.
Then I think what you should have done is maybe observe him for a few minutes. When you pull up in the car, and at that point, all he's doing is on the sidewalk. Do you have any clue, and I'm sure you do, how many real crimes there are going on right now? Like, I have a neighbor who literally had his home invaded last night, and nothing happened. No one got booked.
Their job isn't to prevent crime, they're committing crimes.
So, and that's my issue, is that then you hop out of the car and you draw a gun on presumably an innocent person. I watched the entire thing. There was no sign of him pulling anything out.
Okay. I believe he was drawing a gun.
I know
I'm
in your
sure
head
when,
that's
you,
what
when
you
you guys.
I want to know why you turned on your lights on him in the first place. What factual evidence do you have that you have jurisdiction over him?
We're wasting time here, frankly. I'm trying to explain
I
this
know.
to you,
And
I tried to explain it to him like for like several
No, you
minutes.
didn't. You didn't answer the question.
Okay, so I thought he was drawing a gun, so I drew my gun to defend myself. When he took his hand out, I put my gun away. All right, I just tried to tell him.
No, you had your gun out for quite some time.
You were yelling at him when there was obvious proof he didn't have one. That's my issue.
His hand was in his pocket, and he was turned away from me when I drew my gun.
Wrong.
So
No.
Okay.
No.
You're
he
lying.
faced you the entire time. And like, you're probably going back through your head. You're thinking.
He's trying to cover
through
himself.
The emotion of what? No, I don't think he's trying to
No,
cover.
he
I
is.
think he.
That's what he does.
I think he was stressed.
Yeah, I was stressed out because I
Because
thought he was drawing a gun.
you have no
Stressed.
training.
So,
And I don't want to die, so I'm not going to just.
You
be
don't
like,
wanna die.
Please don't draw a gun
Yeah.
on me.
Heaven
just
forbid
stand there.
an unarmed
Okay.
I
person
just wanted to
is
write him a
dangerous.
ticket
He's looking right at
for
you.
a traffic violation. It's
Don't
not a
write
big deal.
tickets for those kinds of traffic violations. Talk to the person. Have a conversation with the person.
Okay.
He's a human being.
Right.
You're a human being,
Yes,
right?
yes.
If I was pulled over in that circumstance, I would hope, and I think probably you would have treated me. And that's what bothers me. Is that like I'm not gonna. I don't know this guy. I don't really care. And in fact, I would really like to see people slept on.
You should be ashamed of
and
yourself.
dealt with, especially the ones that have warrants. But at the end of the day, like I'm witnessing this in my car.
This is the reason police are starting to be killed all across the country, is because you don't care that you are committing crimes. You don't care that you have no personal first-hand knowledge of any fact that would prove that the Oregon Revised Statute that this cop tried to stop him for applies to that man. When you draw a gun on somebody without that personal first-hand knowledge, that's assault. That is a crime. The fact that you cannot articulate any personal first-hand knowledge of factual evidence ought to let you know that there clearly isn't any.
He's like, oh good. See, ma'am, there's nothing we can do about it. Oh, he's going in the park. Perfect. That's right where he's been on. In my neighborhood park.
Okay.
And then on that.
Okay. Yep.
With no blanket, and shorts and a t-shirt, and it's cold.
I want to know why your supervisor didn't take a report. Are you going to ask your supervisor? Maybe you should get a supervisor out here who is other than the one that showed up there, who tried to be a bully.
The things that need to be dealt with, those things that need to be dealt with, and then I'm like,
Call your
who cares if
supervisor,
the guy's
please.
walking right beside me?
Okay. He's running the wrong way on a four-lane.
Who cares?
Okay. Well, you
Why?
don't care.
Because he's walking towards the crosswalk, and he's going to cross the crosswalk.
I need a
It
supervisor
was like
out here.
the street.
Because this man drew a gun when he wasn't
Riding the
supposed
wrong
to.
way.
Right?
No light on his bike.
What if I drew a gun?
And it just was going to be like a.
Would I be shot and killed?
No,
Probably.
it should not be a big deal. But when someone's acting they're drawing a gun and there's more to this.
He wasn't drawing a gun. Quit pretending that he was.
Okay, and that's in my mind, and I am a very, very low use of force.
Yeah, you're delusional.
I wish it hadn't become this big deal. I wish you guys hadn't been so upset by this, but unfortunately that's just the way it is.
Well, I wish that
That's what I'm
police
saying.
weren't
No,
pulling
you-
guns on innocent people.
And I'm feeling some humanness from you.
Are you calling your supervisor? Yes or no?
Truly.
If you'd like to talk to a supervisor, sir, you can walk right inside and request one. You're at a central precinct.
I have informed you that I would like your supervisor
You were
to
already
come
given
out.
the opportunity to talk to a supervisor.
No, I was not.
Yes, you were,
No, I
sir.
was not.
Is he going to get his, I need to know, is he going to get his bike tonight?
Yeah, that's why we're locking it up here.
If I walked up and practically stood on your toes, would you listen to a word that I said before before asking me to take a step back?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, if I walked up all the way up to you, right to where I'm right in front of you,
I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure what you're referring to is what I'm saying.
well, the supervisor would not take a report because he was standing right here and I asked him to take a step back and he refused to do so.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, I wasn't sure what you were referring
So
to.
let's get a supervisor out here to actually do his job, please.
You can be less quick to draw your gun on a person that is literally wearing, I mean, you would have been able to see that you might
No, he was wearing a jacket. He wasn't. Jacket.
You're lying.
Okay, that's what I saw.
No, dude, you're so full of shit. You say that he put his hand right here. Where was his jacket right there, sir? No, that's not what you told me. That's not what I have on video. Now you're changing your story?
changing some things because I think you're re-rationalizing why you felt
He's changing his story.
first he
That's
turned
it.
away, and then
No,
he put his
it's
hand in his
blaming. He did
pocket.
this like that, and to me, That's how some actors are drawing a gun.
Liar. That's not what he did.
That's what I saw in my head, and that's why I felt that I had to do.
Well, maybe you shouldn't be delusional.
I'm sorry that upset you, but that's, and we're gonna write these reports report. So if like Commander or whoever reads these goes all the way up has an issue with that, will let me know.
And I know you're gonna have to deal with all
The
that
public
yourself.
has an issue with you, sir.
Okay.
And at some point, what's going to end up happening is somebody's going to get so mad at you that they're going to take your life like they are all across the country against police officers who commit crimes. You had no right to draw your gun. You're telling her a different story than I have on video.
All right. At this point, I think I've told you everything I could possibly tell you. I don't think anything I say.
You failed to explain what factual evidence you're relying on
Like I said,
that
I
would
don't
prove
think
jurisdiction.
Anything I
You're-
say is going to change his mind.
No,
at this point.
Well, yes,
So
it
we're
will
gonna
if
go
you
because
actually
we're wasting his time right at this point.
if you actually confess. I need his name.
I'm not going to.
Well, I need his name.
I'm not gonna
You
Yes.
can ask him
No,
his name.
I need his name.
I'm not gonna.
Where are you taking him?
He actually can't
Right there.
legally give his name,
Yeah.
Well,
but you can ask his name.
he just kidnapped him. I don't really care about
I know,
what they're
but-
legally
I
required.
know, but I'm just telling you, he's not going to do it.
Sir,
because
what's
of
your
that.
name?
Yeah.
Sir,
Okay, we're gonna go so he can get his bike, photograph of his bike, get his
Okay.
thing. So we're gonna take.
what's your name?
You have my card. If you have any other questions for me, okay? Okay, man.
Huh?
Take care now.
For giving that to me.
You're very welcome. Take care.
I can't hear you. Hold on.
We're gonna drive away, so just, I don't want to answer the door.
That's where they're kidnapping him. Is your supervisor coming? I heard you call for a sergeant. Are they coming? Is the sergeant coming, yes or no? Is a sergeant coming, yes or no?
The more combative you are, the more they're not going to want to talk to you.
No, trust me. I know exactly what I'm doing, Eddie. That's why they're going away.
Talking about this body which didn't exist. That's frustrating to me.
Yeah, and then just change his story. Hi, you guys just kidnapped a man?
Sorry, what?
You guys just kidnapped somebody? And I
did we
need,
kidnap?
I don't know, I need to find out. And I've also asked twice now for a sergeant and a supervisor,
Who are you?
and one has not come. My name is Robbie.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with any of this. You haven't called in here. I don't know what this.
I understand. I just need to talk to somebody who knows who just got driven in right there, because the officers that did it drew a gun and committed a crime against him.
Okay, can I get your name, your full name, just so I know who I'm.
Just Robbie. R-O-B-B-I-E.
Okay.
He said when they ran his ID that he's like, you know, I can't get into it with you, but there's reasons that he could be here otherwise.
Well, and
Okay, how could you know that though when he's riding the wrong way on?
yeah. Well, and also you have to realize, Eddie, that a lot of the so-called crimes and warrants that they issue for people are not for doing anything wrong.
Sure,
So
no, I
there's-
believe that, but that particular side of the street has a significant issue with crime
Yeah, I believe it.
and drugs
But
and
that man was not committing a crime. The police officers committed a crime, and they need to be held
no,
responsible.
I agree that there was a crime committed more against him than he did to anybody else. I was like, does anybody actually care that he was crossing the street on the wrong side? Like, you could have just pulled over and said, hey, you're on the wrong side of the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Just yell it out your window.
Well,
like,
and-
there's no
and-
need to cite him. There's no need to arrest him. There's no need to pull your gun out. No, like the way he shifted, I'm like, I don't feel like that was accurate.
Yeah, well, and
That's not what I witnessed.
no, that's not what happened. He's changing the story. And also, there still has to be evidence of jurisdiction for them to tell somebody, oh, you're breaking this rule, so we're going to stop you. They have to have personal first-hand knowledge, and none of them do. And if you keep believing that that doesn't matter, then...
Well, but if that's the case, if we're gonna like take it down to that, then they can't ever do anything ever. They can't apply any laws.
Well, you say laws, again, we're talking about Oregon revised statutes. You're right, they cannot apply any of the Oregon revised statutes at this time.
Well, what would make that difference for you?
What do you mean?
Like, when could they apply them?
Well, they can't apply Oregon revised statutes unless they can prove that those statutes apply. So the only thing that anybody can do is stop an actual crime from being committed. So a violation of somebody else's freedom has to be happening, and if somebody has to witness it. And if that person is trained, then they can stop it. But if it's just a matter of, oh, you didn't cross the road at a sidewalk, there has to be evidence that that code applies, because that's what government relies on, consent of the governed, and they're not getting consent for those statutes. Are you the sergeant?
I am a sergeant. What can I do for you?
What's your name?
My name?
Yes.
It's Adrian Matika.
I'm sorry?
Matika, M-A-T-I-C-A.
And your badge number is?
It's 50672.
Thank you. And yours?
Baxter, 37132.
Okay. So I just witnessed a police officer commit a crime. I witnessed several other police officers cover for that crime and kidnap the person that they just brought in there. They stole his bike and locked it up here. When I attempted to talk to the supervisor who arrived on the scene, he walked... Oh, hold on one second. What is your name, sir?
Sergeant Grant Smith. How you doing?
Good. And what is your badge number?
50653.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I mean, no, I'm not going to actually step as close to you as the supervisor did, but he stepped right up against my toes, and he asked me, do you want to, what is your name? Do you want to make a report? I said, step back. He refused. He continuously refused to step back, repeatedly asked me the questions, and then when he wouldn't step back, he was making me uncomfortable. He just said, okay, I guess you don't want to make a report, and he walked away. I asked Bear, the person who drew his gun against somebody when there was no reason to draw his gun, and I'll witness it, she'll witness it.
And we don't share the same ideology, but I 100% agree that he drew it no cause.
I asked Bear, because Bear's story was that he saw the man commit what he called a traffic violation, and then he claims that the man acted like he was reaching for something, and that's what caused him to draw. I was watching the whole scene. I did not see the man draw anything. So, because Bear said that there was a traffic violation issue, I asked Bear, what personal first-hand knowledge do you have of factual evidence that would prove that that Oregon revised statute that you were trying to apply to that person actually applies to him? Bear's answer was physical location. He's in Portland. So I asked him, okay, so what is the connection between those two things? You have one premise, which is you're physically located in Oregon, which gives you the conclusion that the Oregon revised statute applies, but there's nothing to say that that Oregon revised statute applies to that person. So Bear had no personal first-hand knowledge of personam jurisdiction in this matter and drew his gun against him and then refused to acknowledge that he was in commission of a crime. So I just witnessed several police officers commit crimes, and then I got blown off by a supervisor just because he wanted to stand right up close to me in an intimidating fashion, and then would refuse to take a step back so that I could actually talk to him like a human. So what I need to know is, who is the person that got kidnapped? Because right now, this department is in violation, and I need to know who you guys kidnapped, and I need resolution to this, because he should not be in a cage right now. He did nothing wrong. He had a gun drawn on him. Police officer put away the gun. There were shouting words, and then police officer ran up to the man and attacked him. slammed him up against the metal concrete side, and then proceeded to assault him by searching his entire body, and then kidnapped him and brought him here.
Okay. Well, so I'm guessing by the name that you gave for the officer that this occurred in North Precinct.
It was on Grand, like where there's that free exit entrance onto I-84, where that big camp is on one side and the entrance on the other.
Okay.
And he was on the east side of the street.
Okay.
And he was walking his bike on the wrong side of the street at the time. He hadn't mounted it. He had been riding it way up on Grand. I mean, it's pretty empty streets right now. He was riding it way up on Grand, and he came over to cross over on the crosswalk, and the officer pulled up. He's given us two different stories. He said, oh, the guy kind of turned, and then he kind of had his hand in the pocket. I was like, I watched the whole entire thing. I watched the thing from the time he was way up on the other end. It's like, okay, well, from my perspective, I was like, I get it. I get from your perspective that you felt like he might be pulling a gun. But at what point, when he didn't pull it, because I mean, we're talking 2-3 minutes, my light changed twice, and I had to pull over because he'd gotten out. And I was like, I'm watching this whole thing, and you have your gun pulled on a man who's saying, I don't have anything, I don't have anything. With his hands in the air, you proceeded to put your gun away, and you accost him, and you slammed up against a wall and cuffed him. He had nothing on his body. And he was like, okay, you might be right, you know, you can blame it, you know, whatever. I'm sorry that you witnessed that. I thought he had a gun. I was like, I get it. You probably are in circumstances where people do pull guns out on you. This man showed no sign of that. He was looking directly at you during this entire exchange. And then inappropriate action. And he was like, okay. You know, whatever. But it's like, it's not okay. It's not okay because we have real criminals, and I'm sure he might even be a criminal. He might. He might have committed a crime sometime earlier tonight. But we have like crimes going on right now. I spend sometimes an hour or 2 hours calling to try and get response, because I live on the east side, to things that are really big. I'm witnessing cartel people sitting in my park dealing drugs and thousands of dollars in her lap. Which of course, she sees the lights down the road, she packs up and she gets out. But it's like, I'm witnessing this woman night after night, 14 nights in a row, and I can't get response to my area. And this guy, because he has a bike and might cross, like, it's just so trivial. Why couldn't he just yell out the window, hey, you're on the wrong side of the road?
I just want to explain something. I'm trying to communicate with all of police officers, especially in Portland. I track your Facebook stuff, I write comments, I ask questions, they never get answered. And they don't get answered because you are not comfortable with the information that I try to give you, because you don't believe it, because you don't think about it. And the problem is what is going on is you have a code, an Oregon Revised Statute, that is written down, and you guys are assuming that those statutes apply to everybody.
Why do you think that they don't?
Because there's no evidence that they do. You guys are never able to speak about evidence, factual evidence, that those codes apply to anybody at all. All you ever, you treat jurisdiction like all it is territorial jurisdiction, like all it is, well, we work in this location, the court oversees this location, and as though that is the only type of jurisdiction. But you're forgetting about jurisdiction over the person. And what you're doing is, it's a form of slavery, because what you're doing is you're saying this rule applies to you, and we don't care if you disagree otherwise, because our opinion.
Why do you think it doesn't apply?
He wasn't committing a crime.
Because
there's no harm.
Yeah, because there's no evidence that the code applies. I can ask you the question, what factual evidence are you relying on to say that the code applies? And you're trained, in your training, you will give an answer that is either a logical fallacy, an opinion stated as though it is a fact, or eventually you may try to insult me personally or gaslight me and try to accuse me of being crazy. So I ask you, like, for example, let's take some random Oregon Revised Statute. What factual evidence do you have personal first-hand knowledge that Oregon Revised Statute applies to me?
Okay, well, let's say you're out standing in the middle of the street out here.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a statute that says you can't stand in the middle of the street and obstruct traffic.
Well, so that would be sort of committing a crime because now I'm in the way of people who are moving.
Right.
But let's say I'm just walking backwards on the sidewalk when nobody's around. Or let's say that nobody is at an intersection at all, and I run a red light because I can see nobody is at an intersection, so I'm not causing any harm.
But you're still violating it's a traffic control device, and you're breaking the law.
Okay, so what? Well, it's a statute. You're saying I'm violating a statute.
Right.
So nothing to do with law, but a statute. So
in Oregon, a statute is a law.
Well, you call them laws. You borrow from science to make it seem as though it's set in stone, but it's your opinion. But what I want to ask is, what factual evidence do you have that statute applies to me?
Because it applies to people that are out driving on the road. If you choose to drive on the road, you choose to follow the laws of the road. Okay, so you're stating an opinion, but
you're not stating any fact that proves that the statute applies. And that's the thing, that is an opinion. You can't just blanketly say, yeah, this statute applies to everyone that I see, because it actually doesn't.
It applies to everyone driving a car.
Okay, do you have evidence of that?
Well, no one would ever get a traffic ticket if it didn't apply to everyone.
Oh, well,
So.
that's not my problem. What I'm just asking is, because you've created your whole system based upon this idea.
I didn't create the system.
You're participating.
You've joined the system.
Sure.
And by doing so, you're actually committing crimes against people, because you're believing that your opinion makes you right. And the fact that you've gone through training, and the fact that you believe that the statute applies, even though I'm asking you for evidence and you haven't given me any yet, because you believe it applies, you are making the assumption that it does, and you're actually threatening people with violence if they don't obey you. So unless you believe in slavery, why do I have any obligation to obey anything that you say? And the thing, I'm trying to desperately get you guys to see this, because it's costing you your guys' life. It's going to start causing people to file more and more lawsuits and insurance claims against you, because more and more people are starting to realize this. We are all starting to realize this. You have the voters on your side right now, you think, but that's like 18% of the population. And you're applying these codes that a minority votes on against everybody else. And there's no facts. You guys are supposed to not be making legal determinations in the field. You're supposed to be relying on factual evidence only, not opinions.
Actually, we're making decisions on probable cause.
Right, but in order to make an assumption that somebody is in violation of a statute, you have to have evidence that that statute applies. And you have yet to articulate any.
This is like circular logic.
Well, it's your guys' circular logic, because you're saying the code applies because the code says it applies. I keep having to ask the same question because it never gets answered. And
to your satisfaction.
Well, it's not just, no, you're not answering it. You're giving an opinion. You're not giving any facts. You're saying the code applies to everybody. Okay, I asked you for evidence that the code applies to me. Saying an answer to that is not the code applies to everyone. Okay, what factual evidence do you have that the code applies to everyone? It applies to ambassadors who visit. It applies to people who are under a different jurisdiction. No, it doesn't. So I've been asking for facts that show it applies.
Do you have diplomatic immunity?
I don't know what you mean by that.
You just said ambassador, no, and then you said no.
Yeah, so what you're saying is you are making a blanket assumption that the code applies to everybody. But what obligation do I have to have diplomatic immunity? Maybe I have jurisdiction under somebody else. Maybe I govern myself. So what right?
Well, then that's up to you to prove in court.
Well, no, it's not, because you're making the claim.
Because all I have to do is make my assumptions based on probable cause.
But
it's more likely than not that you just committed the infraction or broke the law, that whatever you did applies.
Okay, so but you're making an assumption that the code applies. You're not relying on personal first-hand knowledge of any factual evidence, and that's a problem.
This is not an argument that we're going to solve here today, because you're basing your logic and facts and opinions on something that is not in my realm.
Well, I'm asking for actual facts. You're giving.
What facts at this point could she give you? Because she's just going
Well,
to say,
she can't. Like, ultimately, in order to be honest, she would have to say, I'm relying on my own opinion, and I'm using the threat of a gun to say that my opinion is better than yours.
I have not made any sort of statement whatsoever.
Well, that's ultimately what you have to draw to, because ultimately that's all you guys have is your gun, and that is the thing that scares people into agreeing with you. Just like that officer just pulled his gun on an innocent man for no reason.
Actually, you don't know anything about what happened. So
I observed it.
But you don't know what happened before. You don't know what that person may have.
in other instances, he may have committed crimes.
Well,
but in that, there's no probable cause to pull the gun out in that moment.
Okay. Well, see, you admitted that you saw the person reach for something.
I saw him go like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in someone else's can I please finish my statement? Okay. So neither of us had the same point of view as the officer. Okay?
Actually, I did.
Well, I mean, I was sitting right with him, but I understand.
But were you like right on his shoulder, looking at what he was looking
at? And I
at?
understand that from his eyeballs inside his head, he really believed. I do believe him.
Okay.
No, he changed.
Let's just let her talk and let me talk, and then you can film and do whatever you want to do. Okay.
Yeah, I really believe that he believed that,
okay.
And that's what's problematic to me, is that he really believed a gun was being pulled.
Okay.
And I said this to him, that I understand with his job, he probably has had that actually happen, and maybe he saw signs that he's seen before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But from my place that I was sitting, and it became very clear the guy didn't have a gun. Like I said, it was 2 full light cycles, and he still had his gun drawn on this very, very scared person at this point, who continually said, I don't know what's going on. What's going on? What did I do?
Okay.
And at that point, he's screaming at him, and he says, get up against the wall, puts his gun back in his holster, and then he attacks him. And I'm thinking, that if that's our training, if that's what's going on, and that's how we handle those situations, something has to change. That's not appropriate.
Okay. So what I'm going to say right now is, if you have a problem with what the officer did in that particular instance, you have every right to make a complaint. We are not the people to make the complaint to, because not only does that officer work in a different area, but generally when you want to make a complaint like that, you'd make a complaint through IPR, Independent Police Review. Okay. Second, the person, I don't know what was going on out there. I'm guessing there was more to the story than just whatever traffic infraction the person did on his bike or off of his bike.
Nope.
He admitted there wasn't, but he says that after the fact he discovered some things about the guy that he couldn't share.
Right. So that's why he was placed under arrest for whatever.
But he had already cuffed him at this point.
Okay.
So, like, from my point of view, like, the man has been cuffed, his bike has been stolen from him, he is slammed up against a wall, he's now been abused, in my view. And this could have been a discussion, and this is what I told the officers. I said, you literally could have rolled down your window, because he was very far away from him. I was like, he was not going to be a good shot if he had a gun. You roll down your window and say, sir, you're on the wrong side of the road. The guy probably would have been like, oh, sorry, and crossed the street. If he didn't do that, get out of your car and pull out a gun. But it just, there was no process of even trying to discover. It was an immediate assumption that there was a crime being committed. It was an immediate assumption that it was necessary to pull a gun out.
It's an assumption of guilt.
Escalated the situation from level 1 to 100 in a moment. And then when the guy proved he didn't have anything on him, at least that he wasn't going to pull out, the gun was still drawn on him.
It's a presumption of guilt.
Yeah,
and you're presuming...
It's an assumption the man was guilty. So maybe he, like I said, maybe he's guilty of something else that I'm unaware of, that even that officer was unaware of, because he didn't have time to figure out whether the guy was bad or good or whatever.
And even
right?
now...
So,
even now you're presuming me guilty of the element of jurisdiction, for example. You're presuming that man guilty of the element of jurisdiction. That is an element of the charges. Jurisdiction is an element of the charges. You can't presume somebody guilty based upon your opinion that the statute just blanket applies to everybody.
Guilty of something else, great, but it's problematic for me because I've watched people get arrested who have no record, and now they have a record because they've had an arrest for no reason. And I know that that's not like the majority of them. I know that. And I'm just trying to figure out what is going on that an officer feels the need to pull a gun
It's lack of training.
to have it drawn.
It's lack of training.
When the man proved he didn't have any.
I mean, I can't comment on it because I wasn't there. I don't know who the person is. I don't know what that officer knew about that person beforehand. I don't know if that person matched the description of a suspect in a crime that occurred. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, right.
That wasn't a factor.
Yeah, none of those were factors. I mean, according to the officer, that he saw a man from 2 blocks down the other way on the sidewalk and pulled up to see what he was doing. And I mean, it was way too quick to have any kind of understanding of what the guy might do, and which is my problem. So yeah, it's helpful to know where I can file a complaint. I'm pretty, in general, as a citizen, pretty upset with the responses that I've had, and I don't know the officer's name that stopped by last night, but I watched a man have a mental break, and an officer told me that he belongs in, and I'm not exaggerating, the man was out of his mind and started wandering at our neighborhood park, and I said, well, now he's going to the park. He goes, perfect, that's right where he belongs. And we've had drug issue after drug issue in that park. I said, that is not where he belongs. He needs to go to the hospital. He needs some help. And I know that that's not necessarily, a police officer doing a job to pick up a guy and take him to the hospital, but I do know that there's resources he needs. And so to just have this kind of slacktivist attitude about well, whatever, apathy, it was straight up apathy. He didn't care at all about this gentleman. He's like, oh, please choose to do drugs, and they're mentally ill, there's not a lot we can do. I'm just like, what? And then 5 officers show up to that call, yet I couldn't get an officer to come when I saw money in a woman's lap while she was dealing meth. It's just, my mind is blowing up. I never, ever, ever thought that it would get this bad. And it's literally I lived in Vancouver, BC for 5 years. My husband's from Canada. Stuff like this was going on 20 years ago, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. But one thing that never has happened up there is that people are storing my property now in broad daylight in areas that you can see openly, and there's nothing we can do to recover it. And I know that's not completely within your wheelhouse to deal with, but what can I do to get this solved where I can actually get enforcement into those camps to take this stuff away from these people? Obviously, it doesn't belong to them.
The situation.
I don't know what is going on in this city. It is a wreck. I mean, you have to feel that as an officer, right? I don't know what side of town you guys live on, but it is disgusting.
I mean, I'll double your guys' salary if you'll actually take some training in how to actually de-escalate, prevent crime, and actually not violate people in a criminal fashion, because that's really what you guys are doing. And right now we have a situation where there is somebody being held in this building, I assume, who I saw him brought here, and I am required to demand that you show me the factual evidence that you have that shows that every element of jurisdiction has been satisfied for you to hold him. Otherwise, you have to release him.
Okay. As I said, I don't know the person who's in custody. I don't know why the person's in custody. It's not my business to know because it didn't happen in my precinct.
But he's in this building, and you're in this building, and you work for the same people.
No, well, this building belongs to the county of Multnomah.
Okay, so can we talk to somebody who can find out and be able to show the evidence of every element of jurisdiction?
You can go around to the other side of the building, and that's the county side.
Okay, is that where he's being held?
Yes, he's in jail.
Okay. And so you're saying that you are not able to find out anything about this person, and you're not able to find out any information about the elements of jurisdiction that have or have not been satisfied?
I could go and do some research for you, but it's not really my role.
Okay. And what are the chances that we would have success if we went around to the jail and asked them?
Probably very little.
Yep. Well, and you see this is the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
okay, someone who's been arrested and taken to jail is not being kidnapped.
Well, he is, because
that's your opinion.
Well, okay,
it's not my opinion.
So let me ask you, okay, but again, so opinions now, and so now we're getting to the point of now whose opinion is right? Is it whoever's is might makes right? Is that what's ethical now? Might makes right?
What I'm saying is that that's for the court to decide who's wrong and who's right.
Okay, but
because we're stumbling at opinions.
So let me ask you. What if I decided I'm going to write on a piece of paper that Matika is not wearing the right color outfit, and so I take you and I toss you in my basement?
He may have to stay in jail overnight.
Now it's my opinion that you were in violation when you got jurisdiction.
Some other crime based on opinions.
But you are. Will be out.
We're arresting people based on the crime committed, on the probable
Nobody
cause
stays in
of the
jail.
crime being committed. I understand you're not.
They walk right
You
back out.
don't believe in the law.
Really, so
The
just
ORS is the crimes. That's what we're saying. But there's no evidence for that ORS, right?
There's no evidence that the statute applies.
You don't believe in a crime. That's what I'm getting.
Well, I believe in crime. Kidnapping is a crime, for example.
Whatever, like I see a lot of statutes.
So because you're preventing
somebody
somebody.
committed a crime, then what exactly is it that we need to prove? What the factual, because you keep saying the same thing, the factual evidence that of a crime. What exactly are you trying to say? That's what I'm not finding.
So if I were to punch you in the face, right? Now I've caused you injury. So now I've done something.
Committed a crime, right?
Yeah. But not because of any statutes. Because the statute doesn't matter. What matters is I punched you in the face.
Also, you don't believe in the statute itself. You believe in the facts.
Well, if I believe that statutes are written, but there's no evidence that those statutes apply to anyone.
Well, that's, I mean, you're looking for answers. I mean, we cannot give you those answers here about the statutes because we enforce those statutes. That's our role.
Right, but you
We're not putting together the statute. We don't come up with the statute.
Yeah, but you
It's the legislators.
Well, I understand, but you assume that those statutes apply to me without evidence. It's only your opinion. Evidence that those statutes apply. Because it's important. So let's say hypothetically, do the McDonald's statutes for employees apply to you?
And then this other group of people.
You mean the internal statutes of a business?
Of McDonald's.
The internal statutes of business?
Yeah.
Like
their employee rules. Yeah. Do they apply to you?
No.
Okay.
Unless I work there.
Right. So if some McDonald's supervisor said this rule applies to you,
But those are not called Oregon revised statutes.
well, it doesn't matter. It's still an
I
Oregon.
understand what you're saying, but I think we agree to disagree on this.
Well, but
I'm not trying to, be
yeah.
demeaning or anything like this.
Well, you're fine. Like I respect having this conversation. Yeah, we're having. I feel like we're having a good conversation. But the issue is there's a corporation called McDonald's, and there's a corporation called City of Portland or Multnomah County. These are all corporations that write statutes and pretend as though those statutes apply to anybody, even though there's no facts that prove that they
I
do.
understand where you're going with this, but
So, and the issue is if you just say, well, I disagree with that and we have a difference of opinion, okay, that's fine if we have a difference of opinion, but then if I see you draw a gun or put somebody in a police car or put handcuffs on them because you have that opinion and they disagree because they have a different opinion, now you're using violence to apply your opinion and say that your opinion is more important than that guy's. And that's about that is a crime. That's you committing a crime when you do that. And that's what I'm trying to stop.
I understand.
Yeah.
If I may,
yeah.
I would say that there's a corporation called McDonald's, and they might write their own rules. But
they're not.
there is a government, an elected government, right, who writes this ordinary by statutes.
I see.
Elected is not. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I see state of Oregon, and yeah, you guys just like McDonald's has a board.
Okay, I understand. This is your again. I don't want to be demeaning or anything like this, but opinions. You see that. I'm not saying it's wrong. You're right. But whatever you decide that you want to see, that's fine. What I'm saying, there's a distinction between one and the other.
Okay, so what is that distinction between?
Well, like I said, that's a corporation, and this is, a government.
Well, it's also
a government elected by. No, okay.
A government is not anything.
I'm not going to go there.
Well, it's a corporation. It's a corporation.
I understand your opinion. I respect your opinion, but I'm not going to debate that thing. This is not within my role to debate what government is.
Okay, well,
do you agree with me on this one? I don't want to debate that part.
Well, yeah, but all I'm saying is, Multnomah County is a corporation. McDonald's is a corporation.
I don't think there's.
Right? So there may be people who just make decisions in both corporations, but you're saying that one of those corporations somehow acquired some power to enslave everybody else.
Well, I'm not going to debate this.
Well, but so
I'm listening to you.
Right. So the question becomes now, if you see me run a red light now, where will that debate happen? Are you going to kidnap me and throw me in a cage? Well, what if I defend myself?
So that's a violation. It's not arrestable, running a red light. I get that. What you're saying. Yeah, the penalty could be a fine.
What if you turn on your lights? What if you turn on your lights and I decide not to stop?
I really hope that
okay. Again. Yeah. That's
threat of violence is there, right?
That's a crime.
What happened, but I don't.
How is it a crime?
It would become a crime based on the device statute.
Who have I hurt? And what evidence do you have that those statutes apply?
Okay, I understand. We're going back to that thing.
Right. So,
I cannot provide you that evidence.
What I'm trying to bring, right? You can't. You are unable to because it is an opinion. So my issue is this, and please pay attention. All right, because So if let's say it is an arrestable offense, what if let's say I have a psilocybin mushroom. And you're not allowed to have that. So you're not hurting anybody, but you're not allowed to have picked that mushroom that you just picked out of the forest. And you say, I'm going to have to arrest you. And I say, whoa, okay, what is your factual evidence? And you're like, well, it's just my opinion. And you and I just disagree.
Based on the Oregon Back statute, right?
Well, it's still
which you don't believe in, because there's no factual evidence to that.
Well, there's no factual evidence they apply to anybody. I see they've been written.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So now we have a difference of opinion, and you're willing to throw me in a cage because you disagree with my opinion, because you have all of your employers and all of your fellow employees with your guns and body armor who will back you up, and you have judges who will back you up. But you're the minority. Even if all of the voters in America voted for these statutes to apply to everybody, that's still like 28% of the population. That is the minority. So the minority is using violence to impose their will and try to create morality by writing down rules when there's no evidence those rules apply. And people are starting to realize this. And in places like Detroit, Michigan, police officers are replaced by threat management center, which they don't have to use guns. They hardly ever carry guns because they don't need them, because they've learned the psychological way to stop people from committing crimes. They have learned how to protect people without escalating and using violence. Stop or I'll shoot. They don't ever have to do that. They stop crime from happening. They protect people. They've never had any of the people that they protect be killed. They offer their service for free to anybody who cannot afford it. They have completely replaced police, and they don't apply arbitrary statutes. So
what state is this?
This is in Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, so they don't have police anymore there. Is that what I'm?
They have a police department,
Okay. Same
but
as this one, right?
similar, but they don't do hardly any of the work. Its Threat Management Center is a private corporation that actually protects all of the people and prevents the crime. So this is what is going to start happening, and what I'm trying to do is explain to you guys.
Yeah, so I don't feel better.
I'm trying to explain to you guys that using violence to enforce your opinion is wrong. And I can help you see that. All I have to do is ask you questions, and if you answer them honestly, you would see it. And the problem is if you keep on believing as you do that these Oregon revised statutes apply to people just arbitrarily, then that is what is causing people to get mad at you guys.
Okay, I understand your opinion.
Yeah.
I totally get your opinion.
Well,
I understand where you're going with this.
And we win in court. We win. And it's important to know that we win in court, because here's the thing. I'm creating a system, okay, that will be fair, impartial. Everybody will get fair and meaningful hearings. And police officers like Bear, who committed the crime tonight, sorry, I point outside, but he committed a crime tonight.
Yeah.
So I can prove by giving Bear a fair and meaningful hearing that he committed a crime. And I'm not going to rely on, the Multnomah County court system and a judge who's paid by that same corporation, because that's a conflict of interest. I'm going to rely on fair and impartial jurors and give Bear due process. But if he's found guilty of kidnapping, then he will be held personally responsible. So far, police officers have felt like they can do what they want because they end up having judicial immunity.
But that's agree that we generalize here.
Well, but that's not going to happen.
But you agree that we generalize.
Generalize.
When you talk about police officers in general, is that what you're saying? Or?
Well, how many of you?
I'm asking you.
Yeah.
An honest question.
Obviously, I'm generalizing, but can you show me a person who gets to keep their badge and their gun and wear their uniform every day, who doesn't apply the statutes arbitrarily to people?
Well, again, we're not going to debate this with you about the statutes. I understand your opinion. I know what you're saying. I totally get your opinion. However, I'm not going to debate this with you.
But you understand, it is an opinion.
The number of police officers has gone down.
We use the threshold probable cause when we make an arrest. Okay.
Right.
It's not an opinion. It's the
in addition to
threshold
technology
probable cause,
there are just more people calling the police than there are.
Right, so probable cause being.
If you anyway, you have a piece of paper from IPR, right?
Yeah.
I think if you want to file a complaint, all the information there on this officer, you can address that complaint to IPR, it's self-addressed, and it's said by IPR.
Well,
for
right.
this specific officer.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop right there with all the comments.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, so are you going to continue to apply these Oregon revised statutes?
Again, I'm going to stop with all the comments right there.
Okay.
What was the name again?
Robbie.
Robbie.
Yeah. Well,
Robbie what?
Just Robbie.
Oh, okay.
You can find me online if you really search.
No, I'm just, I provide you my full name, my badge number, and all that, so I'm expecting, hey, this is my name, this is who I am.
Well,
that's fine.
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking about legal names, which is arbitrary. So my real name is actually Robbie. R-O-B-B-I-E. But
I'm not asking for that. I'm asking just for some honesty about what the real problems are. And when you lie to me, because he lied to me, looked at me in the face and told me there are issues of housing crisis. It's bullshit. That's not the problem. Our crime is up 50% the last 2 years in my district. And like, it's insane. It's completely insane, and it makes it unlivable. And I can't deal with it anymore. I'm gonna lose my mind.
Right.
So all I can do is vote and hope that maybe somebody gets in there that can do some good. That's looking bad. So
It's not gonna happen.
that's not gonna happen. And our mayor is completely clueless. So until maybe he has the rise in property crime on his own property, maybe he won't get it. And that's super frustrating. And then I know he's tied the hands of some of the police officers. Keeps talking about budget this and budget that for the police. And I'm like, but are you going to apply it? Like, is your bureau going to apply it to make sure the officers are staffed to what they need to be? I mean, 45 this year and 49 next year, that's nothing. And that's like city, why are you talking like 600,000 people in the city of Portland? Like, that's not gonna be enough.
Baby steps.
Yeah. Which, you know, I do, and I don't know where you stand on recruiting those officers. Do you see that as a 100% good thing, or?
Well,
you know, your staffing is down,
yeah,
so.
we need more people, for sure. I mean, the more people we have, the more we can do to address livability issues, community issues, be out and about more. Because right now, generally, what we're doing is just going to calls for service as opposed to doing more
Patrol,
like directed patrol and trying
And
to
I
reduce
told you,
crime.
like, the 2 nights after the drug issues were going on, and we had done some filming and observing and reporting, and night 3, the cops just came 4 times and just drove through, and they scurried away, and night 5, they were gone. I mean, they haven't been back since that night. They'll come back again. But in the meantime, there's been a presence, and my neighborhood has no presence. I swear, like, I could speed up and down that street 80, 90 miles an hour, there would be nobody would come. Because they're just not around. And there's no presence, and they know that. I mean, I heard them chatting in the park after the officers came that one night, because they came every night, they just didn't stick around. It was like that 4th night that they actually stuck around. And they were whispering to each other, like, see you at 11 tomorrow. Like, they're just gonna do it again. Just a different night when nobody's bothering them. And it's this attitude of like, we own this place,
Right.
cops aren't gonna do anything, we're just gonna do our thing. And it's like, I don't want that to be the word on the street, that, hey, this area of town, that's where you can do your drug business.
Because it's not the police's actual job to handle that. You have to have a private corporation whose interest is in handling that. The police, their interest is politicians.
That, that's for sure. And that's where I'm at with it. It's like, there's no ability to actually deal with that.
And if I try to stop them, you will stop me. Like, if I try to go and handle the crimes that are happening in my neighborhood, I'll be stopped by police officers, which is ridiculous.
Why do you think that?
Well, because you'll assume that I'm violating a statute. And you'll assume...
Well, it would depend if I did, like, I think he's talking about if he were to, like, actually handle the situation, and someone else could call in and he could get arrested for accosting a person or harassing them, or, I mean, that's a risk.
Depends on what the person is doing and what you do in response.
Right. Yeah, it's like when
You're allowed to use force to protect your property and protect other people, so.
But am I allowed to use force if somebody is applying their opinion against me under a threat of violence?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, like if for example, I was the man on the bike and police officer drew his gun on me. Yeah, and if police officer said this statute applies and he's like, turn around and let me handcuff you, and I declined, and he came at me, then do I have the right to defend myself? Because now it's your opinion that statute applies even though you can't state any evidence that it does. So you're creating a sticky situation, because if I try to defend myself, I'm going to get killed by you over an opinion.
I think you're being a little extreme.
Well, I'm not though. Okay, so you try to handcuff me, right? I elbow you to stop. Okay, that's only going to escalate the level of violence to a point to where you will use up to and including deadly force to stop me from defending myself.
If I used deadly force because you pushed me with your elbow, then I'd probably be charged with a crime.
Right, but what if, but you would escalate.
Well,
You would escalate,
yes,
I would defend
you're trying to
myself
get control
more.
of your body.
Right, because you're going to try to take control of me at that time, and if I continue to resist, then eventually it could get to the point of deadly force. All because it was your opinion that that statute applied, and it was my opinion that it did not. And there was no factual evidence to prove that it applied, so I have every right to have that opinion, unless you're able to articulate facts other than an opinion, other than a logical fallacy. The code says it applies, therefore it applies is a logical fallacy called a circular argument, but it's one that police rely on quite often. So there we have a situation where now, because a police officer thought that a statute applied, now an innocent man is dead because he tried to defend himself against an armed individual.
This is just your example.
Theoretical, right?
Well, yeah, if that guy on the bike had said, no, you're not handcuffing me until you show me evidence, and the police officer said, yes, I am, turn around. The guy said, no, you're not. The police officer said, yes, you are, and grabs him by the arm, and guy, does some maneuver. Police officer escalates. Guy continues to try to defend himself. I mean, we're talking about the force continuum. We're talking about an escalation that commonly happens. Like, if I attacked you now, yeah, you would try to stop me using the minimal amount of force, but if I continued to try to, get away or whatever, then you will use eventually deadly force if you have to. So we have situations where this type of thing is happening, and it's all happening over an opinion, and that's a problem. If you don't have facts to show statute applies, now we have an issue where if that person disagrees, you say might makes right, and ultimately all you have are the fact that you have all of your people who will come out and protect you. You radio them in. You all have guns. You all have body armor. So you're going to overpower an individual just because he has a different opinion.
We need you back for a minute.
This is a common tactic to try to end a conversation. What's your name and badge number?
Sergeant Helzer, 41782.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just informing you all that because the man is being held here, that you all are assisting in the kidnapping of him.
Okay. Do you have one of the APR forms already?
I have 2 of them.
Perfect. All right.
But that's not what I'm going to rely on to hold everybody responsible.
Okay.
No.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.